Good evening and welcome to CYC News for today, the 20th of March 2016 and the 11th of Baramhat 1732 AM. I'm Anastasia Atia. In today's headlines, international Orthodox news in Australia, Canada, Egypt and France. John Kerry says ISIS are responsible for genocide. Is he a big mouth clown? China reacts to Donald Trump's rise. Brussels shooting, suspects on the run after an ISIS flag and rifle are found. Judge suspends swearing in of Lula da Silva to cabinet post in Brazil. Obama states his take on Putin, Netanyahu and ISIS. And a hiker finds a rare gold coin in Israel. To our international Orthodox news, starting in Australia. On Saturday, March the 12th, 2016, the Eastern and Oriental Orthodox churches beat with one heart this week when the Serbian Orthodox Church's patriarch visited SAC, that St. Athanasius Coptic Orthodox Theological College in Melbourne, for a special inter-Orthodox gathering. On Tuesday, the 8th of March, the leader of the Serbian Orthodox Church, His Holiness Patriarch Irenej, visited SAC in the Melbourne suburb of Don Vale, accompanied by His Eminence Metropolitan Dr. Amofilo Hije of Montenegro, and the Literal and His Grace Bishop Irenej of Australia and New Zealand from the Serbian Orthodox Church. Among the guests were His Grace Bishop Ezekiel and His Grace Bishop Lakovos from the Greek Orthodox Church in Australia. Representatives from various Christian denominations, the Vice-Chancellor of the University of Divinity Professor Peter Sherlock, heads of colleges and academic staff, clergy from the Coptic Orthodox Diocese of Melbourne and SAC students. In his introduction, His Holiness Patriarch Irenej offered his respects to the long-suffering Coptic Orthodox Christians, with particular mention of the 21 Coptic martyrs who were martyred in Libya in 2015. His Holiness also instilled a profound optimism in the future of the Orthodox faith. His Grace Bishop Dr. Cyril, the Coptic Orthodox Bishop of Melbourne, acknowledged the strong relationships of love and dialogue which have been established between the Oriental and Eastern Orthodox churches, built up over time through formal and informal consultation and dialogue. A highlight of the day was the presentation of an icon of Saint Irenaeus to His Holiness by the college community. Before leaving the college, His Grace Bishop Dr. Cyril thanked His Holiness for his blessed visit, to which His Holiness replied by also thanking His Grace for the warm welcome and hospitality that the college community had shown to His Holiness. His Holiness also extended a kind invitation to His Grace Bishop Dr. Cyril to visit him in Serbia. Over to Canada for some Orthodox news. On Monday, March 14, 2016, Mr. Nabil Marouf, the Palestinian ambassador, visited His Grace Bishop Eclemadius, the General Bishop of Ottawa, Montreal and Eastern Canada in the Church of the Virgin Mary in the Canadian capital, Ottawa, to offer his congratulations on the occasion of enthroning a new metropolitan for Jerusalem. The meeting also contained talk about supporting the Palestinian issue by the Coptic Church in front of the official authorities in Canada. Still in Canada, where in Ottawa on Wednesday, March 16, 2016, the Catholic Archbishop of Ottawa, Terence Prendergast, visited His Grace Bishop Eclemadius, the General Bishop of Ottawa, Montreal and Eastern Canada. They discussed aspects of cooperation between the two churches. The meeting was attended by Father Mikhail Pham, Mr. George Mikhail, Father Anthony Murad, and the Catholic Archbishop's assistant, Christian Reisbeck. In Egypt, on Tuesday, March 15, 2016, a ceremony was held on the occasion of passing 3 years of the establishment of the Church's Council of Egypt. The ceremony was attended by His Holiness Pope Tawadros II, the head of the churches that are members in the Council, Amber Abraham Isaac, the Patriarch of the Catholic Church, the Reverend Andrea Zaki, head of the Anglican Communion Metropolitan, Metropolitan Nicholas Anthony, Metropolitan of Tanta for the Greek Orthodox, the Deputy of the Greek Orthodox Patriarch, and Metropolitan Munir Hanna, Archbishop of the Episcopal Church in Egypt and North Africa. The celebration was held at the headquarters of the Coptic Evangelical Organization. And to our final piece of Orthodox news. In France, on Wednesday, March 16, 2016, His Grace Bishop Mark, General Bishop of Paris and Modern France, received His Eminence Archbishop Vahan, the Archbishop of the Armenian Orthodox Church in France. It was a meeting of unity and they discussed the aspects of the cooperation between the two churches. In other news, the Secretary of State John Kerry said on Thursday that the United States has determined that ISIS's action against Yazidis and other minority groups in Iraq and Syria constitutes genocide. My purpose here today is to assert in my judgment ISIS is responsible for genocide against groups in areas under its control, including Yazidis, Christians and Shiite Muslims, he said during a news conference at the State Department. Kerry said that in 2014 ISIS trapped Yazidis, killed them, enslaved thousands of Yazidi women and girls, selling them at auction, raping them at will and destroying the communities in which they had lived for countless generations, executed Christians solely for their faith, and also forced Christian women and girls into slavery. Without our intervention, it is clear that those people would have been slaughtered, he said. This is the first time that the United States has declared a genocide since Darfur in 2004. The House of Representatives on Monday unanimously passed a resolution labeling the ISIS atrocities against Christian groups in Syria and Iraq genocide, a term the State Department had been reluctant to use about the attacks and mass murders by the terror group. The genocide finding does not legally obligate the US to take any particular action, but it could put pressure on the Obama administration to take more aggressive military action against ISIS. It could also give weight to calls by other lawmakers and humanitarian groups, pushing the Obama administration to welcome more refugees into the United States. In US election news, for months, Republican frontrunner Donald Trump has repeatedly targeted China on the campaign trail, pledging to put tariffs on goods produced overseas and bring things like the iPhone production back to the United States. Trump has even used a broken English accent at a campaign rally to mock the negotiating style of Chinese businessmen. CNN reports that Beijing had previously downplayed any impact Trump's rhetorical could have on US-China relations, reducing it as a mere disturbance. But this week, that all changed. With Trump securing major victories on the road to the White House, China issued a scathing criticism of the US election process and the candidate who has opened a Pandora's box in US society. In an editorial published this week, China's state-owned Global Times newspaper condemns the billionaire candidate as big-mouthed and abusively forthright. The Global Times claims Trump was initially supposed to act as a clown to attract more voters for GOP. Instead, it goes on to imply that the Republican Party lost control of Trump, who has now become the party's most nightmare. In Belgium, authorities are searching for 2 suspects who escaped when police raided a Brussels apartment linked to last year's terror attacks in Paris. The apartment raid turned up an ISIS flag, a Kalashnikov rifle and ammunition. But 2 people escaped after an intense, prolonged firefight, according to a spokesman for the Belgium Federal Prosecutor's Office. According to CNN, during the raid on Tuesday, authorities killed suspect Belkhaid Mohammed, age 35. Spokesman Eric van der said in a statement that the Algerian had not been on authorities' radar before. A sniper for the Belgian Special Forces killed Mohammed when he tried to open fire on police from a window. His body was found next to a rifle and a book on Salafism, a strict branch of Islam that dictates only the followers of the Prophet Muhammad practice the correct Islam. According to Van der Sit, authorities also discovered 11 loaded Kalashnikov magazines and innumerable shell casings, but no explosives. An intense manhunt followed Tuesday's operation in the southern Brussels neighbourhood of Forest. Authorities connected it to the investigation of the Paris terror attacks that killed 130 people in November. A Brazilian federal judge moved to block the controversial swearing-in of the former president Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva as chief of the staff to President Dilma Rousseff, the latest twist in the country's deepening political crisis. According to CNN, Lula, as the 2-time former president is known, was sworn into the cabinet post earlier on Thursday amid heated protests by opponents who say the move is an attempt to shield him from corruption investigation. Under Brazilian law, senior political figures can only be tried in the Supreme Federal Court, meaning any prosecution against Lula da Silva would effectively be delayed if he was chief of staff. The swearing-in took place amid chaotic scenes in Brazil's capital, Brasilia, with protesters shouting shame while government supporters sang Lula to the tune of a soccer chant. However, a federal judge in Brasilia, Itanheba Cara Preta Neto, swiftly issued a preliminary injunction to suspend Lula da Silva's swearing-in on the grounds his appointment prevented the free exercise of judiciary power, the operation of the federal police, and of the federal prosecutor's office. Iraqi security officials told CNN that suspected terrorists with links to ISIS on Saturday fired rockets containing unspecified chemical substances into a residential part of the northern Iraqi town of Tauza. The attacks caused an unspecified number of casualties from suffocation, burns and dehydration. Tauza, which has predominantly Shiite Turkmen population, is located about 12 miles, 20 kilometers south of Kirkuk. A US Special Operations team captured a senior ISIS operative involved in chemical weapons about 3 weeks ago. Several officials said US-led warplanes have since conducted airstrikes targeting chemical weapons based on information provided by men who has been identified as Slayman Dawood al-Bakr. His capture, however, has not stopped alleged chemical attacks by ISIS or other terrorists associated with the Islamist militant group. Earlier this week, officials in Iraq's Kirkuk province claimed that around 100 people were injured in suspected chemical attack, also in Tauza. Pictures from that attack showed victims with swollen eyes and skin burns. In Washington, President Barack Obama defended his decision not to intervene militarily in Syria's civil war in an interview published on CNN, detailing internal clashes among high-level US officials. Obama said that he was very proud of his decision not to take military action against the regime and breaking with conventional foreign policy wisdom, something he called the Washington playbook. The interview was part of an in-depth article in The Atlantic by Jeffrey Goldberg exploring the president's foreign policy doctrine, particularly in the Middle East. Amongst past observations about Obama are his remarks about Russian President Putin. The president said that the Russian President Vladimir Putin was scrupulously polite, very frank, and that their meetings are very businesslike. On Netanyahu, the president recalled telling the Israeli Prime Minister after he launched into a long speech about the regional dynamics that Obama reportedly felt was condensing. Bibi, you have to understand something. I am the African-American son of a single mother and live here in this house. I live in the White House. I managed to get elected president of the United States. You think I don't understand what you're talking about? But I do. And Obama's take on ISIS? Advisors recall that he once called ISIS the JV team rather than an existential threat, but no longer. Obama has since likened ISIS, also known as ISIL, to the character of the Joker in the 2008 Batman movie The Dark Knight. In Israel, the Israeli Air Force carried out strikes against 4 Hamas targets in the northern part of Gaza in response to the launch of 4 rockets at Israel from Gaza, the Israel Defense Forces stated. CNN documented that a 10-year-old Palestinian boy, and his 6-year-old sister were killed, according to Palestinian medical sources. Their 13-year-old brother was critically wounded when shrapnel struck his face during the strikes, according to the official Palestinian news agency Wafa. The IDF said no one was injured from the 4 rockets fired from Gaza because they landed in open areas. There have been 7 rockets fired at Israel from Gaza since the beginning of the year, according to the IDF. CNN reported in Jerusalem a 2,000-year-old gold coin with the face of a Roman emperor was discovered. The shiny object was just sitting there in the grass waiting to be found. It's so rare that only one other such coin is known to exist. According to Dr. Danny Sayan, a coin expert with the Israel Antiquities Authority, the coin is rare on a global level. Laurie Ryman found the gold coin while hiking in eastern Galilee recently, not far from the biblical site where it's written that Jesus walked on water and performed the miracle of the multiplication of the fish and bread. Ryman from a kibbutz in northern Israel turned it over to the Israel Antiquities Authority. It was her own little miracle. It was not easy parting with the coin, she said. After all, it is not every day one discovers such an amazing object. But I hope I will see it displayed in a museum in the near future. And our final story is one of mystery that has evaded the best minds in archaeology for decades, the unknown face of a beautiful queen who ruled over ancient Egypt at the height of its power, Nefertiti. But Nefertiti may be hiding in plain sight, according to a recent theory that set the Egyptology world buzzing. Adding credence to that theory, Egyptian Antiquities Minister Mamdouh al-Damari, who announced that, based on preliminary findings from a radar scan of King Tut's tomb site, experts are 90% sure they found 2 new chambers behind the walls of Tut's resting place. I'm sure we haven't heard the last of this story. And that's all for CYC News. A reminder, you can watch this news bulletin again on YouTube. I am Anastasia Attia from the CYC studios in Sydney, Australia. Good night and God bless.